Ladies and gentle gamers, the first patch of the alpha has just dropped. So we're going to be going over all the changes, which are mainly attribute related, but there's a little bit that we have to go over that's foraging. So make sure to drop a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's jump into it. So the first thing you'll notice is if we do /recipe jungle, it does still pop up with the jungle axe, but they have changed the name to spruce axe. And that's because it's now from the spruce collection. It's a very cheap craft and you unlock it at spruce level 2, which is only 100 spruce logs. So it's going to be a lot easier to get, especially for bingo in the future. I'm very much looking forward to this, but also just as an early game axe for getting into foraging, it's a lot easier to get your hands on. And what they've replace it with in jungle collection is where it used to be at jungle level 7. They've put the Tricapitator here now, and they have swapped the recipe a bit, so it is a lot cheaper to get your hands on. Instead of needing like 8 stacks of enchanted obsidian, you just need half a stack of enchanted jungle logs. So this should make getting into foraging in the future a lot easier. They also added a brand new armor set from the quest NPCs. So if we go over and talk to Charlie, I'm not sure if my lobby's updated because when I talk to Charlie, he just has some dialogue. He doesn't give me the quest item, but apparently when you complete each of the NPCs quests, so first piece is from Charlie, the second piece is up here from Kelly, the third piece will be from Melody, and the final piece will be over here from Mulkin. And basically the set's going to give you a little bit of foraging fortune on top of some health and defense. But if we look at the patch notes, you'll notice a few things that are very important. Specifically, they are announcing the Kuudra loot table and showing us exactly the drop rates, which we'll go through that in a second, but let's go through the actual notes themselves first. Kraken shards are no longer in the Kuudra loot table. Instead, they are now guaranteed from each Kuudra run, and depending on the tier you're doing, you'll get a certain amount of shards. So T1 and T2 you get 1 shard, T3 and T4 you get 2, and T5 you get 3. They also added the Tormentor and Hellstorm wand to the Kuudra loot table, and the Tormentor is a new sword that will replace the Enrager, and its drop rate is way higher than the Enrager's was, and to be able to use it you'll have to have an Infernal Kuudra clear and a combat level of at least 42. But shout out to Future77 for getting me some pictures of these. This is what the Tormentor looks like. Does 525 damage at base, and the damage you take is doubled while holding it. I don't think this thing really is going to have a place in the meta, to be honest, but maybe we'll get some adjustments for it in the future. And there's also the Hellstorm wand, which gives you 5 ability damage, but you take double damage for 30 seconds. So it's basically the same ability where your damage is pretty high, but you take double. But this one's for mage, and I mean, this thing doesn't actually increase your damage, it just makes you take more damage, and it is the highest damage output left click weapon in the game, I think, because Claymore is 500, so I don't think that this nerf is really going to make it usable in most scenarios, but swords aren't really used that much anyways, so it's not that big a deal, I think. They also talk about how you can craft a bunch of exclusive shards with the Vitality shards. They also added the Travel Scroll to Kuudra's Hollow to the Kuudra loot pool, made Kuudra Mandibles salvageable for 500 essence, and buffed the free chest from Kuudra Run. They also plan to rework the Inferno enchant to increase your damage while in Kuudra's lair in the Crimson Isles, so Inferno might actually end up becoming somewhat meta for Blaze Slayer if its drop rate gets a little bit higher, maybe. And also an upgrade to Molten Equipment that increases your stats while in Kuudra's Lair and the Crimson Isles. Right now I believe it's only in Kuudra's Lair you get extra defense, but if it increases all of your stats in Kuudra and Crimson Isles, it might be comparable to Vanquished Equipment as well. Now in this document they show kind of the drop table for Kuudra now, so I'll have this set of patch notes and it's got all of the links here throughout it for all of these documents that I'll show. So that will be linked in the description if you want to take a look yourself. But you can kind of see the drop table for all of the new things. So the Travel Scroll to Kuudra is a 0.8% drop chance. The Ananke Feathers are a 0.36% chance. The Tormentor and Hellstorm Staff are 0.1%. Kuudra Cores are 0.5%, and so on and so forth. So this table right here is your primary drop, so you're guaranteed to get one of these drops per run. Here are the secondary drops, so you're guaranteed to get one of these per run, and then the attribute drops that could also be secondary drops are right here as well. So I believe you are guaranteed to drop a bit of Kuudra essence, some Kraken shards, which is the Vitality shard, and some Kuudra teeth. Again, huge shout out to Future77. If you haven't subscribed to him, make sure to do it. But he's got all of this Kuudra info in his Discord, so shout out to him. But this is one of the things that I'm kind of iffy about. They are nerfing the cost of Infernal Kuudra armors by approximately 60%. So a set of 15-star Infernal armor used to cost about 3.7k runs worth of Crimson Essence, which is kind of crazy. So now they're nerfing it so that it should take about 1,100 runs to get one full set of 15-star Infernal. So you can see the exact rates right here for how much the old essence is going to cost versus the new essence. So it's the exact same until you get it up to Infernal. So it's going to cost a little less to get it from Fiery to Infernal, and then it's going to cost a lot less per star after that. So they're not nerfing it pre-Infernal. So you can see all of this, the base level is the exact same, hot tiers are exact same, burning's the exact same. It's just once it gets to Infernal, that's when it starts becoming cheaper. So if you're one of the few people that does have this 15-star Infernal already and you already paid full price for it, it doesn't say that they are doing any compensation for this adjustment. So unfortunately, it might be in the bin for you. But the next section is about the Ananke feathers, which I'm sure all of you know what they are by now, but just in case you don't, they basically added feathers that they are giving out as compensation for god rolls, and you can trade in those feathers for a certain RNG meter. So I have some Ananke feathers here. If I right click with it, you can see I have access to all these RNG meters. If I go over to my M7 meter, I can gain 7k progress towards it from my feather. And again, these are also going to be a 0.35% drop rate from Kuudra, so they're not only from god rolls, but that is their main source as of right now, since nobody's really running a ton of Kuudra on the alpha. But after it's added to the main game, you'll be able to drop it from Kuudra or from turning in god rolls. However, they've changed some things with the way you turn in god rolls since the first day of alpha. On the first day, they said that if you dropped anything or crafted anything after it was launched on alpha, then it would not count. But now if you've crafted something and it's still on the list of god rolls, then you will get compensated for it. However, they have changed this list significantly. So you can see what it would give on day one if you had mana pool, mana regen on Aurora boots, chestplate, helmet, or leggings. It would give 8 unless it was a helmet, then it would give 2. And now you'll be getting 6 if you turned in any Aurora god rolls. It would be 6 unless it's a helmet, then you get nothing. So they've heard a lot of backlash from the community talking about how it was too overpowered for the feathers. So they've taken away a lot of these god rolls. Some of them going from 1 feather down to 0, others from 11 down to 8. But again, if you want to see this for yourself, there's a link in the description. I'm just going to scroll through the whole thing right now. You'll notice Hellfire rods and Inferno rods do not count at all for god rolls anymore. So if you just invested in a bunch of those, it's not really gonna pay off, unfortunately. However, one of the few things that hasn't changed is the Magma Lord god rolls. So if you had Magic Find Blazing Fortune god roll, then that is 20 feathers you'll be getting from that, which is pretty crazy. But they did take off Fire Veil wands. So apparently Fire Veil god rolls were giving 1 feather a piece, and now they don't give any. Now they've also made some changes on the main server with attribute shards. So they've reduced the conversion rates of them on the alpha, and they've also changed some things with the main server. They've temporarily disabled attributes on most non-Kuudra gear until the Foraging update drops, along with a /attribute menu until release. So you're not going to be able to combine up any armor pieces until the update is released. You will still be able to grind for attribute shards from Kuudra, but if you were doing Rampart armor strats, lava fishing sets, or vanquished gear, that's not going to count anymore. They will refund at half of the normal rate. So if I turn in this Rampart piece now, I will be getting 0 to 1 speed attribute and 0 to 1 lifeline attribute. So if we go ahead and claim that, they both failed to convert. So it's a 50-50 chance for the level 1s on whether you'll get anything at all. If it's level 2, you should be guaranteed 1 of each shard, but level 1s are 50-50s. Now if I take these Aurora leggings with speed 4 veteran 5 and turn them in, you'll notice I'm getting 4 veteran shards and 2 speed shards. Whereas before these changes, I would have gotten 4 speed shards and 6 veteran shards. So you're going to be getting a lot less attributes per piece than you were before this change. But seeing as Kuudra armor is still way better to transfer than Rampart, it's gonna be better than most options now. Now a lot of people, myself included, have been complaining about how Aurora armor doesn't feel as strong now without its attributes, so they've thankfully decided to do some changes and buff up the intelligence that each piece gives. So you can see the full 4/4 stats right here, but if you run 3/4 with Wither Goggles, then these are the stats right here. They also plan to buff the set ability to grant mana for 10 seconds upon activation. Note that this is mana and not intelligence, so it will only increase your mana pool and not your damage. So basically, you'll just get the ability to spam a little bit more before your intelligence runs out, but you'll be doing the same amount of damage as before. And they do have a little bit more detailed stuff right here, so you can see the exact stats that you're going to be getting per star, and also how much extra stuff you're going to be getting per tier. So at basic, before you used to get 235 base intelligence, now it's going to be buffed by a pretty significant amount, all the way up to 460, so almost double what it was at before. And some of these rates end up being over double. Everything after basic, hot tier is twice as much mana, burning is twice as much mana, so Infernal is going to be a lot more worth it, especially at 15 stars, seeing as 15 stars is going to be a lot cheaper to get now. And you can also see the text for what the new ability would be. At 10 stacks, sneak to reset your stacks and shoot 3, 4, 4, 5, 5 homing missiles dealing damage each, and you gain 800 extra mana for 10 seconds. So you'll still be getting the extra missiles shooting off, but you're also going to get 800 mana. So this ability is going to be a lot better than it is currently. They also talk about some rebalancing that they're doing around the attribute nerf. So seeing as Vitality was giving too much healing that would have been rebalanced in the near future, they've decided to nerf the damage that T4 Inferno Demon Lords do, since you'll be getting so much less healing because of the lack of Vitality. Veteran was also way too strong, but after the nerf it was a little bit too weak, so they've bumped it up to 10 Combat Wisdom, and they may end up giving Slayer specific XP buffs as an alternative boost to buff the rates of your Slayer boss spawns without buffing Combat Wisdom by too much aside from that. Before these changes, speed allowed players to attain high amounts of speed, especially in dungeons, and they feel like this nerf was justified. So at the moment, they're not doing anything to change it, but if it ends up being too much of a nerf, they might change something later. But seeing as tuning points are just an easy way to get speed, I don't think it's necessary, but we'll just see what happens. Mana Steal has been reduced from 20 per hit to 5 per hit, so it was a bit too strong apparently, but it'll still be a 5% increase to your mana regen per second, assuming you regenerate 400 mana per second through passive regen, power orbs, and the Mana Steal enchant. So just a slight Mana Steal nerf. Now this is a pretty cool bit of information. They're planning on doing a large rework to Magic Find at some point, and they want to move temporary / conditional sources of Magic Find, for example enrichments or sorrow armor, so you don't have to do any armor swaps or anything. So that's part of the reason that they're swapping off the Magic Find attribute from armor onto the regular attribute system. But they felt like it was too much of a nerf to Magma Lord, so they did buff the Magic Find on Magma Lord for against lava sea creatures at least. They've also done some pretty awesome stuff, reducing chill bestiary, which is I believe the new strays, and also flare bestiary reduction from 100k to 10k. So this is a big deal if you haven't maxed this yet. Basically, instead of them changing the spawn rates of flares, they've just nerfed the flare bestiary. Also, they will be fixing the Gauntlet of Contagions kill duping functionality, so this will also help with that. And actually, they are trying to fix the spawning issue with flares, so should be a win-win. Basically, before, if you wore a Gauntlet of Contagion, then every time you killed a flare, it would count as 3 kills, because flares are technically 3 blazes, and it would just bug it out. So instead of having to get 100,000 kills, you really had to get 33,000. But now they've nerfed it even more down to 10k, so this should be super duper easy, even with the Gauntlet being fixed. Apparently, the frog pet was accidentally put as a fishing pet, so it's now a foraging pet. They're also going to be nerfing the damage with T3 Blaze Slayer as well. We talked about the 30% nerf for T4 already, but T3s will get a little nerf too. And they also rescaled the number of attributes required to upgrade shards at each tier of rarity. So basically, the only thing that was broken was common shards were giving 85 to max is what you needed, and it was supposed to be 96. But they also changed like the total amount of shards a little bit, so you'll see at level 4 to get an epic it's 6 on the new system, and before it was only 5. But you can basically just see the difficulty was a little bit wacky right here. The graph doesn't look like the same color the whole way across, whereas this one looks a lot more like it should. It's very difficult to get from T9 to T10 compared to everything else for common shards, but it's not that difficult to get it for the legendaries and the epic. Now, the shards themselves might still be difficult to come across depending on which ones we're talking about, but you don't have to get the same number. If you had to get 24 to go from level 9 to level 10 on a legendary, that'd be a big issue. But for common shards, it's not that many. But that's all the changes on the alpha for today. So I know a lot of people were asking for nerf feathers and everything, so glad we got that, but for those of you that were investing in it, I apologize. This one might be a little rough for you. But overall, I think it's pretty good changes for the most part, especially in regards to the nerfs on a bunch of the attributes where now we're getting weaker T4 Inferno Demon Lords. I think that'll be helpful. And the Magic Find rework in the future sounds pretty cool, so I'll be looking forward to that. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching to the end. Hope you enjoyed. I will catch you in the next one. Have an amazing rest of your day, and God bless.